We have so many platforms at our disposal in terms of Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, online galleries, offline galleries. There are so many options when it comes to where we put ourselves and where we put our artwork that it can get really, really overwhelming, distracting, and time consuming. And one of the biggest questions, and I get asked a lot, is which platform should I put my work? Where should I put my work? People want to know that. We want to know that, don't we? Where should I put my time and my effort so that I get in front of the right people, so that I can make some sales, so that I can make some connections? And with the overwhelming array of platforms in today's world, it can get really, really confusing. And sometimes people just don't make a start, or they are doing things in a way where I'm going to talk about it in today's episode. So basically, what I would say, first of all, is there are so many platforms to choose from. And the first place to start when deciding is which one you like to be on. So that might not answer all your questions, but it should be top priority. And I share this because I do see people looking at other artists and seeing them selling on Instagram. We had a member inside our community, Jackie, who just sold on Instagram. She made an amazing living on Instagram alone. And when we see that in other people, that can make us think, oh, well, Instagram must be the platform to use. So I should use that, even if I detest it. Come on, Michelle, let's use this. Someone else is selling on it, so it must be good. So first of all, just because someone else is selling their art on Instagram doesn't mean that you're going to sell your art on Instagram, but it's great to see. It's a great sign, but it's not always the same for someone else because there's so many factors that have affected that person being able to sell on Instagram. The first one being they enjoy it. So you have to enjoy the platform that you're using. That would be the first thing I say. Now, when it comes to the big selection of different platforms to use, and then you don't know maybe which one that you do like because there's so many, we're working with people at the moment on our 7 Keys course where we recommend to people to whittle it down to 1 to 3 options. This is what I had to do when I was starting out as an artist. I really honed it down on a few options and I tested them. So I did a recce of what was available to me and I wrote them down. And then I just selected 1 to 3 to start with because you can't choose all of the platforms and test everything in one go. So I chose 1 to 3 and I tested them to see what I enjoyed using and see how it felt. And then I realized that I really loved back then, this was 8 years ago, I really enjoyed using Facebook. So I focused all my effort on Facebook. And this is something else to take into consideration as well, is lots of people think that by being on lots and lots of different platforms, that I'll have more chance of being noticed and seen. Which in some respects is absolutely right. Of course, the more we get ourselves out into the world, we will be seen, we will be noticed. But I've also noticed the difference, the opposite of this happening. So if you are just starting out, for example, and you set up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, all these different platforms, and now I'm going to juggle all of these platforms and I'll be on LinkedIn this day, and then now I've got distracted and I'm on Instagram, so it might be 2 weeks before I log back into LinkedIn again. What happens when someone does this is they have breadth and not depth. So it's kind of like lots of top surface conversations and usage going on. I'm not saying it can't work, but I see the alternative working better. And this is what I did, is to streamline it right down at the beginning whilst you're growing. Another thing is when you see other people who have the website, they have the blog, they have all the social media accounts, again, it's sometimes easy to think that, oh, that's what we should have because these artists have it and that's what we should have. My mentor, Stu, gave me amazing advice years ago, and he said to me, grow into it, don't go into it. And that phrase has stuck with me, and that is relevant in this situation right now. Trying to jump into all the social media platforms, blogging and everything to get yourself known and get yourself out there is sometimes a mistake that people make in the beginning stages, because that is something we grow into. All the different social media platforms and all the things come usually after mastering one or two things at the beginning and then moving on to something else and then moving on to something else. So for example, when I first started out, I stuck to Facebook, just Facebook. Now, I did have accounts on other platforms, and I'll talk about this in a second, the difference, how I approach this. My main focus was on Facebook, building connections, having conversations, learning how Facebook works, what kind of posts do they like, what works on my platform. And I lived and breathed Facebook. And I had depth, not breadth. So I focused on Facebook like crazy. And I learned that platform inside out, and my posts got seen and I was able to grow. And it was amazing. And then once I'd established myself on Facebook, then I set up an Instagram account. And then I did the same on Instagram. Now, I did have accounts on other platforms, but I didn't ever spend any time on those platforms in terms of what I was putting out into the world and selling, and where I was using those platforms, and this is how I want you to think of it differently, for networking. And that's what I do now. So now my main platform is Instagram. It's just switched in the last 6 months, actually, where now my 80% of my focus goes on Instagram and the 20% of focus goes on Facebook. And we do have accounts elsewhere. We have a YouTube channel, we have TikTok, we used to have Twitter. I closed Twitter down, but we just post little things over on those platforms. Now, 100% though, our focus is on Instagram. You know, that's where our focus goes. That's where the conversation's going, because then what happens is that's when you start to nurture relationships and you speak to people and you'll learn about the platform, because every single platform is different. Etsy, YouTube, TikTok, they're all different in the way they work and the way that you work them. So you'll want to choose the one that you enjoy and then learn about it and really hone in on that, rather than when you're starting out trying to be on all the different platforms, because you have that depth. Then you nail that one platform, then go on to another one, then go on to another one. And so I wanted to share that because sometimes it's time consuming when you're on all these places. And the mindset sometimes is, if I'm just on this one platform, I'm not going to get seen in front of enough people. There are enough people on one platform, and there should be, it depends on the platform, of course, to build relationships and talk to people and build trust in your artwork and get to know people. And that's what social media platforms are all about. So that is really important. Of course, you want to be putting yourself out there. So I don't want this to get confused with putting yourself out there and having conversations and being in different places, because yes, that does help. But when it comes to choosing the place that you are, where you're bringing people back to, the more streamlined you can make that at the beginning, the better. And still obviously get yourself out there and talk to people and have other platforms. So for example, I still have LinkedIn and I have other platforms. I'm not there all the time though. I'm using them to have conversations. So I check in once a week on some of these other platforms and just have conversations with people. So that's the first thing. You have to enjoy it. The second thing to consider are your people there? So sometimes it's easy to look at something like TikTok, which is getting amazing reach on video at the moment, and is a really sometimes a more effective way than somewhere like Facebook to reach people and to get noticed. And this can then lead us to think, right, I'm going to move all my attention now to TikTok, which is great if you enjoy using that platform and it's exciting. And then are your people there is another question to really ask yourself, because if you are putting yourself on this platform to reach your people, and you might not know who your people are yet, but that is something that as you grow as an artist, you'll start to learn more about who are you trying to attract, who are you speaking to through these platforms, who do you want to sell to, who are your customers, who are the other people that are going to be interested in your art, are they on this platform, is something to really consider, which is why Facebook and Instagram are usually the go-to, because there are billions of people using those platforms and it's highly likely your people are on there. It's then how you stand out and speak to them through what you post and how you use that platform to get in front of them. So you have to enjoy it. Question whether your people are on there. And then I wanted to talk then about using places to sell, because sometimes people get hung up about Etsy and online stores and which one should I use. So in terms of those kinds of platforms where you're probably not on them as such, like a social media platform, you kind of maybe put your work on there to sell, and maybe that's what you're getting stuck with, choosing where to sell your artwork. In terms of that, there are platforms like Etsy and online galleries that you can put your work onto. The one thing I would say with Etsy is that they do have footfall going to their site, so you might make the odd sale. And especially when you create a new account on Etsy, you'll see that you'll get sales because the algorithms, you're new and they're pushing you out. But there are so many people on Etsy that you will get lost eventually in a sea of people. And what tends to happen with those platforms is you still need to send people over there to buy. So you still need to work social media. You still have to have conversations and say, hey, my work's over on Etsy for sale. Hey, my work's on Etsy. You have to keep mentioning it and driving people there and have the link in your bio from social media. So what tends to happen in those situations is people then think, well, what is the point in me sending people over to Etsy where I have to pay commission when actually I could drive people to my own website? That would make more sense. So that's where you'll find a difference of opinion on those platforms. But I know lots of people that have started out on Etsy. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at the beginning, especially if you want to quickly get your work on a platform and have it on there and it's somewhere that people can buy, with a view to growing into your own website, having your own store in the future when sales start to pick up. So again, it's that grow into it, don't go into it. If that's the stage that you're at and you're just starting out and you want to put it on Etsy, go for it. But just be mindful that you'll have to push people to that platform, and eventually you'll probably want to come in off it and build your own website and build your own store. So there is no right or wrong in terms of which platform is right for you, only in terms of what you enjoy. Are your people there? That's the most important. And then the next thing to consider is when you choose that platform, it's how you get it in front of people. So that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning around pushing yourself out there and having conversations is important. And what you can do is, if Etsy is your main platform, for example, then you'd be going on the other platforms, sharing that. So it's always good to have a base where you're driving people to. So if you went and put a post on LinkedIn, for example, you could say, I've just released this new artwork, really, really excited about this artwork. I've just done a video. If you're over on Instagram or Etsy, go and check it out. Here's the link. And so you're driving people back to your main platform, your main base, for example. That's one way of doing it. That's what we do a lot in United Art Space. We keep driving people back to Instagram because that's where we are predominantly. And so that's what you want to be thinking about, is how now do I stand out on that platform? So that's why going deeper really does help, because you learn how to use it. Or if it's with a gallery, how am I going to drive people there? with a website, if it's your own website, once you've decided that that's the road you want to take, how do you drive people to it? So it does take trial and error. I know sometimes we just want to pick the place and get it right, but there's a lot to be said for trying something and figuring it out and knowing whether it's right or wrong. You'll learn along the way. You learn by doing. And so have a look at your options. And this is what we're teaching people inside our 7 Keys program at the moment, is look at your options and bring it down to 1 to 3 options and test it, try it, see if it works, test it for 90 days and ask yourself those questions. Do I enjoy it? Are my people here? And how am I going to use this now to get in front of people? How am I going to drive people to this platform? How am I going to stand out on this platform? Having conversations, talking about my work, talking about myself, those kinds of things. And knowing that you'll learn along the way. Start small and grow. And we now have different platforms, but that's because we've grown into that. We've been doing this 8 years now. So one last thing before I wrap up is sometimes don't get distracted by, or you can get distracted by platforms that seem to be having a trend. So there might be things that pop up along the way. So maybe Instagram is the chosen platform. And then something else pops up and everyone's raving about it. And everyone's saying, oh my gosh, everyone is going over to this platform now. I've been in this business now, online world, for 8 years. And I've heard this so many times. Oh my gosh, this thing's just popped up. Everyone's moving to that. Everyone, all artists now are using this platform. And people start panicking and they move over to this new platform. And I'm trying to think of an example now. There was one recently, Clubhouse was an example. And, I'm not saying that Clubhouse doesn't work, but I don't know if you've heard of Clubhouse. If you haven't, that says it all, really, because it was a big trend. And it was about a year or 2 ago. And everyone was talking about Clubhouse and everyone was getting excited about it and everyone started using it. And it's kind of, I would imagine it's still working for some people, but it's kind of fizzled out now. And if you look back at history, that there are platforms that had big trends, like MySpace, and then MySpace closed down. Periscope was one that I used to use years ago, and I built up a following on Periscope, and boom, that got wiped out when Facebook brought in their live feature. So there are platforms sometimes that have these trends and a big surge, and you can choose. Sometimes you can choose to use it and ride the trend and connect with people during that time period, and then it'll fizzle out. Or like me, I just stay in my lane. I don't get distracted by those things. Sometimes I tinker with other things and play, but I'm focused on my platform. And my majority of my time goes into that, 1 to 3 places, one maximum on social media. Because the other thing as well, having lots of social media accounts is time consuming. So putting all your efforts into one will serve you more. You'll have more momentum, more conversations. The algorithms will love you, rather than trying to spread yourself across lots of different social media platforms. Like I say, it's okay to have accounts on those platforms and have the odd conversation with people and drive them over to your main platform. But trying to manage one social media is hard enough, never mind 5. That is just totally insane. Unless you have a big team behind you, and then yes, of course, do it. So I wish I had the answer of yes, go and use Etsy or go and use this certain type of gallery. One thing I would say with online galleries is just do your homework. Just go and check them out. If there is a gallery that catches your eye, do your research. Have a look at other artists that are exhibiting and selling through that gallery. Ask them how they're selling, how's it going, and always just check whether there's any cost implications in terms of upfront costs. This is something that I get asked a lot. Is it normal for people to take money from me as an artist? And I don't think there's any such thing as normal. There are galleries that sometimes take a fee up front. It's usually advisable to err on the side of caution around people that want to take money up front, because what that usually means is they don't have any faith in selling, so they recoup their costs by charging people. So they're covering their backs basically by getting paid no matter what, whether your work sells or not. Now, for some people, getting their art out into the world, into a platform, is all that matters. It's that first step. I remember having my first exhibition. It was just all about, I paid for it to be out in London because I wanted to experience it and I wanted to have my work on the wall with other artists. And for me, I wasn't concerned about whether it sold. It was about the experience. But if you are putting your work into places and you want them to sell, then usually if it's a gallery or online service where you've got to pay up front, there's usually no one selling for you. So that's something you need to bear in mind if you're choosing a platform like that. You need to do your homework. Who's selling this? What are you doing to sell it? Because if a gallery is confident they can sell your work, they will take commission as opposed to an upfront fee. That's something that I would just put out there as something to consider. But it's great today. We can go and network with people online, find other people, ask them. You can also do Google searches for the gallery and find out if they've got any reviews and things like that. So you've got to whittle it down to 1 to 3 different types of places, and then do your research, try it out, make mistakes, learn from doing, and then get into that momentum building when you find somewhere and just keep doing it and get everywhere. By everywhere, I mean then once you have that platform, shout about it and go and talk to people. That part is important, but people sometimes misunderstand that as being in all these different places, when deepening that and then going out and bringing people back to that place is the best option I have found anyway. That's just my opinion. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back next week for some more Motivational Monday. And if you want to share with me how this episode has helped, please do on social media. And let me know. Let me know what platform you like using and what's worked for you. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.